Hello, Dr. Wesley. Hello, Donald. Welcome to our show today for the Tuesday's episode. And today we're going to talk about how to make use of our time during the stay-at-home period in order to engage more with readers and also writers, and probably do more of writing at this point of time. So I would like to welcome all those who are watching right now, or probably all those who would join us later on after the broadcast is over. Welcome to our show, and hopefully you will enjoy today's episode. So, without further ado, let's welcome Donald Firesmith to our show today. And probably, could you let us know a little bit about yourself? What you're writing at the moment, about your books that you've written before.
Okay. I started out writing technical books. I'm a software and system engineer, so my first 7 books were technical books. And then I went back to writing fiction. And I have 4 fiction books out now. And I did write very recently a new technical book, but is quite different and actually relevant to some of the things that I do. My Hellhole series, get these right here. This is basically an alien invasion series. The basic premise is, what if there were humongous holes that showed up around the entire Arctic Circle overnight? What causes them? And turns out to be an alien invasion. The work that I'm working on right now, I'm working on the second book in the Secrets series. This one, the first one's The Secrets of Hawthorne House, which won a couple of awards so far. This is a young adult book. It's really quite different than the Alien Invasions. It's a modern paranormal fantasy book that deals with the clash of 2 radically different cultures, one quite normal and one anything but normal. My most recent book is a technical book called The Simulation Theory of Consciousness, or Your Autonomous Car is Sentient. And it basically looks at the close functional analogy between the human brain and your self-driving car, and what are some of the ramifications of that. What I'm working on now is the second book in the Hawthorne House series. That's going to be The Secrets of Sanctuary Cove. And I'm also working on the third book in the Hellholes series, the end of the trilogy, Hellholes to Hell and Back.
Right. So that's pretty interesting to know that you have written a non-fiction book. Is the one that you wrote on the self-driving car? I suppose it's non-fiction or manual.
It's basic. It's definitely nonfiction. It is fairly heavy in both the neurobiology of the brain, and also quite heavy in just how a system such as an autonomous vehicle is built. There's quite a close analogy between them, between the computer brain, if you will, of the self-driving car, the human brain. In both, we take information from the outside world and about our bodies, and we process that. We build a model of reality, a dynamic simulation of reality, our reality, and we use that to decide what our behavior is going to be. And in that sense, the car and the human do exactly the same thing, that they take in information, they process it, they build a model of reality, and then they decide how to behave based on that model of reality. So if we're conscious, Maybe our
Mhm.
cars are too.
Ah, right. So we will talk more about that later on. So Dr. Wesley,
Hi
uh,
there.
hello.
Hi
Uh,
there.
right. So could you like let us know a little bit about your books, about what you do?
Sure. Well, like your other guest, I spent a lot of time writing nonfiction before I got around to fiction. Back in the
Uh-huh.
when I first got started, I wrote an awful lot of scholarly things because I was a PhD in American literature. I did a lot of writing about Mark Twain and Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, and all of that kind of stuff before I started writing encyclopedia articles and essays and book reviews and that stuff out until about of 1995 thereabouts, and I had a poetry period, which is kind of interesting right now because I've reactivated all those poems, and they're having a bit of a renaissance. I'm having a lot of success actually sending them around to people who are really interested in a lot of those poems again. Kind of like that. Around 2000, I started writing nonfiction books on espionage, fictional espionage, and actual espionage for two different publishers, Spy Television, Beyond Bond, Spies in Fiction and Film, On Screen and Undercover, The Ultimate Book of Movie Espionage, and Encyclopedia of TV Spies. And somewhere along in there, I got sick of spies, started writing the Beta Earth Chronicles, which began with The Blind Alien, this book right here. I guess you can see
Yeah,
all
you can see that.
that. And that has led to, well, there's now 7 books in the series. The last one so far is Alpha Tales 2044, where I
Uh-huh.
have moved over into doing short stories rather than novels,
Mm-hmm.
or related short stories, with a new generation, a whole different set of characters, because I think I took the original set of characters as far as I possibly could on 2 planets. So to get us back to planet Earth, I set us in the future, and I've got 2 series of interrelated short stories that I'm presently working on. One of
Mm-hmm.
or on Beta Earth, which is very espionage oriented. By the time I go back to Spies, I guess. The other is on our planet, set 40 years in the future. And it's kind of interesting what's going on in today's world because in my future, it's an apocalyptic sort of thing where global warming and weaponized plagues have really decimated planet Earth. And I've got a detective named Mary Carpenter who investigates terrorism and that sort of thing in that time period. And so it's kind of like watching the world around me right now gives me things I need to probably integrate into those stories because they really, for science fiction writers, we're probably looking at a great seismic change in what's going to be expected in futuristic writing from this point forward. I have a feeling. I would never have guessed, for example, that in an apocalyptic situation, that people be worried about toilet paper, baby wipes. Who would have thought, you know? I mean, so it's kind of interesting. I see a lot of fodder for writers out there in the streets right now.
Uh-huh. Right. So Dr. Wesley is actually not new to our show. So is Donald. I think we have had the both of you actually on our shows before, and it was a pleasant experience hosting the both of you. So and it is extremely joyful to actually learn that you have new books coming out there, and you are writing on your sequels. So yeah. I actually wanted to also talk about the awards that Donald has won for the books that he has written, right? So, Donald, actually, a few months ago, you landed an opportunity of a publishing opportunity, and you also won several awards. So, probably you would want to, like, share your experience with us about that and what kind of awards you've won and how did you go about that?
Okay. The one book that has won the awards is The Secrets of Hawthorne House. There's the
Uh-huh.
little stickers right here. It came in as in second place in the Reader's Favorite Book Award for 2019. See if I can get this up here to show a little better. And it came in number 3 in the Best Indie Book of the Year for 2019. And there are a lot of awards out there, and what I've done is applied the book to probably about 15 or 20 different ones, hoping that it wins at least some. It was also picked as a nominee for the 2020 Top Shelf magazine's Book of the Year.
Right. Awesome. So, and also about your publishing contract that you have gotten. So probably could you like let us know about how you actually went about getting an opportunity and how to actually network so that writers or probably authors out there can be noticed by agents and also publishers.
Yeah, for fiction work, it's almost impossible to get a book published unless you have an agent. Major publishing houses use the agent as sort of the gatekeepers to make sure that only fairly decent and appropriate books come into them. So it's a big issue trying to figure out whether or not you want an agent. I started out as an indie author for my fiction work. I use traditional publishers for my nonfiction, but as an indie author, it gave me a lot of artistic freedom to do what I wanted. So I use Kindle Direct Publishing for Amazon. I use Barnes & Noble Press. I use Ingram, and I use Smashwords to get it out there. I actually lucked out in getting an agent. Are you still there? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't move my mouse, so the screen went blank all of a sudden. Anyway, there was a local literary group with a lady who's both an author and sets up various events. So like author nights at Barnes & Noble or author events, meet authors at local libraries and so on. And so I got to know her over the course of a couple years doing that. And then she joined with several other people to to create a literary agency. And so it turned out that I already knew her. And so when it came time for her to become a literary agent, I was on her short list to get. In my case, it was definitely a case of knowing the person first, developing a relationship, having them, see the books, read the books. When it comes to like applying to agencies by email and submitting books, I tried that for about 6 months, and it was actually quite depressing.
Yeah, yes.
Right. So I think it's all about networking, finding the right people to talk to, probably attending writers' events, and finding out who the key people are in your industry and trying to expand your network so that people will know that what you write, what you're capable of, and then somehow or other the opportunity will come to you. I think it's a gradual process. It takes a lot of time, but at the end of the day, I think it makes sure that we will be seen, and the right agents can actually pick us up later on when they want to, or probably when the opportunity arises, right? So,
well, publishers really want to obtain books that they can make money on. So they want to know ahead of time that the book's going to sell. and that's a hard thing to do if you haven't had any books out and sold them. It's sort of a catch-22. And the nice thing about ebooks and print on demand is you can start out as an author, develop a readership, have a newsletter with several thousand subscribers, and you can use that, you can leverage that a little bit to convince agents that it's worth their time to represent you.
Right. So, and also about brands also have social media as well as website. So we can see over here, this is your website. I believe this is your primary website where you engage with your audience, and this is also where readers can sign up for your newsletter, right?
Right. There's also some things that I publish on my website, short stories, things of that nature, that they can only get by coming to the website. I also use the website to sell autographed copies of the books. And one of the things that I do in my copious free time is I create magic wands, handcrafted wands based off of a wand book. And so I also then sell these jeweled wands on my website. So it's not just authors. I try to sort of have things reinforce each other. The other thing that Welsey and I have is, since we're in science fiction, we can go to science fiction conventions, and you have sort of a captive audience of potential readers there.
So I think these are all little things that you do over time that would help you to stand out among the other writers out there, right? So you've also won, several awards. We can see over here the stickers of the Hawthorne House, 2019 Reader's Favorite, 2020 Top Shelf Book Awards, silver medal and nominee, right? So talk about how do you actually go about finding how do you enter the awards, and how do you actually keep track of websites or probably agencies that are hosting these awards?
Okay, it's fairly easy over the internet. You can Google book awards, and you can come up with a fairly long list of them. Now, what you got to be careful about, though, is some of them are legitimate and some of them aren't. All of these book awards typically have some kind of fee that you have to pay to enter, and the fees can range anywhere from I suppose something on the order of 50 US dollars to 150. I do know that there are, you can Google this as well. I used to know the website, but it had a list of all of the bogus ones that you want to stay away from. And they, once you get them, you just, go to the website for the award thing, fill out the information, pay the money, send in the book, and you wait to find out whether or not you win.
And talking about nominations and talking about the process of getting people to vote for you, right? So we do have several awards where it is required for authors to actually get people to vote for them. So what do you think about that? I mean, because as we know, you tend to actually ask people who have not read your book and asking to vote for the book, right? So
one of the awards I did win which was the reader's favorite. That was where I came in as a silver medal winner for that
Uh-huh.
one in 2019. Um, it was a case where readers voted, and in my case, having had books out for 5 years or 6 years, I had
Mm-hmm.
a readership of about 4,500 readers of my monthly newsletter. And so
Uh-huh.
one of the things I did was I sent a notification of the thing out to
Mm-hmm.
my newsletter subscribers, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure that that's where I got the majority of the votes.
Mm-hmm.
They were
Okay.
readers; they were already interested in me.
Correct.
Uh, I really think if it's one of those kinds of awards, you really need to not rely on just an average person looking at the site and saying, "Yeah, I like that."
Mm-hmm.
You also it does help to go out on, say, Facebook and various
Social
social
media. Yeah.
places, and let people know about it and put up the website information so it's very simple for them to click on a link and go directly there to vote.
Right. So yeah, let's come back to Dr. Wesley. Dr. Wesley, you have been a reviewer, right? Book reviewer for quite some time right now. So,
Decades, yeah.
could you actually talk to us about how you about the process of reviewing book and how do you review books, and also how people tend to actually review a book, and how people are supposed to when you're reviewing book, instead of bashing the author, or probably instead of bashing the book, how reviewers can provide critical comments of the book. So probably you would want to share your experience with us.
Sure. Yeah, I've been writing reviews for various venues for a very long time now. I really started writing academic reviews for academic journals, and then I'm
Mhm.
writing for Salem Press, and they had these McGill's book reviews, and I wrote lots of books for that, all kinds of subjects, because I'm a very eclectic reader. I begin nonfiction books and entertainment, or Brazilian poets, or sci-fi, or thrillers. I go through a lot of places. I wrote for
Mhm.
for a while until it got a little bit complicated to jump through their hoops. Most
Mhm.
write for bookpleasures.com, and I do think that getting really good reviews is a whole different game than just asking people to post something at Amazon, because people
Mhm.
on just post these little paragraphs or a couple of sentences, and not take them if you can get them. But I'm a more serious professional reviewer, because for Book Pleasures that I write for, he wants them to be, in the hundreds of words to thousands of words range, that are in depth. And that
Mhm.
there's a lot of analytical thinking. And it also requires
Mhm.
some tact, because in all these years, and I don't know how many hundreds of books I've reviewed, I've really
Mhm.
written two or three out and out bad reviews, because the books were just so atrocious. There wasn't anything good to say about them. But you do try to, at least I try to find ways to encourage people to, well, people like books that I don't. And so I try to put in,
Uh-huh.
this might appeal to this particular audience. These books might appeal to a young adult audience. These books might appeal to those who like zombie apocalypse books, or whatever it might be.
Uh-huh.
Know that this is the audience for this particular book and this particular reader. Look for the things in the book that might distinguish it from others in that genre. Look for things in the book that give it some style, some flair, whatever.
Mhm.
And if they don't have that, then you just got to pretty much recite the facts. This is a book about this, and it comes from that, and these are the main characters, and here is the basic plot line, and avoid spoilers. But I got
Mhm.
a good job of it, because I get a lot of repeat business, because I have all kinds of
Mhm.
who like the review I did of one.
Ah, yes.
Because I'll publish Pleasures first, and then I repost them at my two blogs, and then quite often at the New Book Review, and at Goodreads, and at the books Goodreads page, and a lot of people are doing, and others are now Amazon. That's it. Well, come on, guys. There's more than the evil empire. Evil these days. But, I do think readers do find reviews at all kinds of places other than the Zon, and I'd like to encourage people to think about that when they look for reviews, because there are multiple outlets and multiple venues and multiple places to get the word out about your particular book and your canon.
Right. I think a lot of people right now, they are keen. I mean, especially authors, they are keen to have their books reviewed on Amazon, because that is influencing the algorithm, or probably the sales algorithm. Or it helps the books to be seen by a lot of people. So it's some very complex algorithm of Amazon itself, whereby we don't really know how it works, but the only thing we know is that the more
there are professional sites out there that, like Kirkus Reviews and Midwestern Book Reviews, and literary agents and publishers definitely see those kinds of reviews. Now, those are about the only reviews I directly pay for, just because that's part of the game. But there's a couple of things to think about. You want not only a minimum number of reviews on Amazon for it to then show up in, if you like this book, you'll also like this other book kinds of advertising. But I'm also looking for decent praise quotes. And so one of the things I do is I send copies of my books to authors who write similar books. And quite often then I can get a nice review from one of the authors, and people tend to pay more attention to that as opposed to somebody who's just a Amazon reviewer. I also use Book Sirens and Voracious Readers Only. These are a couple websites that you make your books available free, and they act as a go-between between you and reviewers. Voracious Readers Only has a lot more people downloading copies of your book, and I got a lot more reviews from them, although only maybe about 1 in 10 persons who downloaded the copy actually ever got around to posting a review. Those sites, you pay a certain relatively small fee per month or per review that gets published. And I think that those are great sources also for authors to use.
Right. I think, that was definitely helpful, because there are lots of professional reviewers out there on Amazon providing honest feedback. They valid. They purchase the book, so it's a legitimate purchase, and it's not a bogus review. So that
friends who say they ignore the first 10 reviews they see of a book at Amazon because they're sure that they're all written by friends of the author. I don't know if that's true, but I can see why they would think that way.
There is an interesting problem there, that Amazon does have a habit of every so often removing a review. Their computer sort of, if you're friends with somebody on Facebook or you're friends with somebody on Goodreads, Amazon has this nasty tendency to delete their review after they post. But it's really kind of crazy, because as an author, you want as many people in your fan base as possible. And so in general, if anyone asks to be my friend, on Facebook or Goodreads, I'm more than happy to, agree to that. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're, close friends who, I can twist their arm into writing a bogus review. So I personally think that Amazon's algorithm sometimes is a little excessive.
Very excessive.
Right. So, actually, Dr. Wesley, I can see something very interesting over here on the website, which is a page that is dedicated to explain in detail about your characters, how they look like, where they come from, what they studied for, and everything in detail. So this is pretty interesting. And could you tell us about how you go about um, trying to write something in detail about all your characters? Probably I can see like it's so in depth. The descriptions are very
Thank you.
detailed. Yeah, so tell us about that, Dr. Wesley. I think it's very interesting. Probably readers would want to know about that.
Well, for one thing, I wanted to put material at my website that is not typical of most book websites. And one of the biggest draws to my books, or at least to me, or kept me going, is the characters. So we created cards for people to look at. And I gave a lot of descriptions because for me, when the project started, I had a couple characters in mind that kind of, were launching points. And then as the series progressed, there were more and more and more characters coming along. And I loved that process because they invented themselves. Maybe exception, namely Malcolm Renburn, the blind alien himself. All of the other characters came, I don't know where they came from. They just kind of, sometimes I deliberately set out to give them different characteristics so that some would be from poorer classes and some would be from richer classes. And Don said about culture clashes. All the books that I have on Beta Earth, the big part of it's about culture clashes. Through adapting to one country's culture and another country's culture and all of these different settings and environments. And representatives of those would be part of the story, of course. And loved that part of it. That was a big part of the process. When you do world invention, that's one thing. But creating all of these people that I hope come to life and breathe and people fall in love with. I know who the popular character is, Jolin, who comes from the She's a tall, beautiful Amazon, so no wonder men especially like her. But they are able to represent themselves. They are able to represent a class. They are able to represent their culture. And you build in this case, a tribe, really, that's a composite of all of these points of view and perspectives that pulls together a planet, really, into this particular tribe and into this particular family. And I heard there's so many women there because it's a polygamous world because there's a plague that kills 3 out of 4 male babies their first year. So, having multiple wives is the norm. And my wife would ask me, which one's me? Sorry, hon, none of them. They all created themselves, I don't know where they came from. But did it answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, Donald?
Yeah, I have the same thing for my Hellhole series. I have information about each one of the characters as well as the different kinds of alien demons. It's pretty standard for professional authors and movie and TV script writers to create a profile for different characters, including things like, what's their main goal? What's their secondary goals? What are their character traits? What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? Things of that nature. And having that to begin with helps ensure that your story is consistent. Behave the same way with mannerisms and things like that. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the character's static. In fact, very often you want your main protagonist to evolve during the course of the book, to go through sort of the standard 6 or 7 stages of a book or a movie and grow and change. But it's definitely very helpful, not only for your main characters, but also for your secondary characters, because those aren't typically as well thought out. And in a profile, you often write a lot of stuff that doesn't make it into the book, obviously, but it influences what happens in the book. And you think different things, backstory and stuff of that nature that helps the character be a more well-rounded character.
Right. Excellent. So, Dr. Wesley, I think you could also relate to what Donald has explained earlier. So, in that case, right, I would actually want to talk to you about incorporating characters that are blind, because we can see a lot of characters that are blind in your book. So tell us about that, and tell us about your own experience and how that actually helps you to engage between your readers, you and your readers.
Well, the original concept for the blind alien, I don't know, the cover maybe shows somebody blind. I'm not even really sure.
Yeah.
Was I wondered what would happen to an ordinary blind human who was transported to an alternate universe and left to a planet where he doesn't understand a thing. He doesn't understand language. He doesn't understand the culture. He doesn't understand the technology. And to begin with, he's a captive, because that they zapped him there because they want to find out if his biology might have the cure to that plague that I mentioned earlier. How is a person going to adapt in that circumstance? And that was kind of my original question that I posed to myself and him on Beta Earth. And then that's the start of all the torments that he has to go through and all the fights that he has to go through. And as his tribe builds and develops, then they have to go through, their own turmoils and things. So it becomes not just his quest; it becomes the family's quest. Same time, I introduced Lore, who's the blind prophetess, who has that typical blind prophetess gift for prescience and that sort of thing. And she's different from him because he became blind as an adult. He was blinded in the capture when he was pulled from one world to the other. She was blind from birth. And from my own personal experience, I can tell you that there's a world of difference between going blind and living your whole life blind. Because if you've lived your whole life blind, that's all you've ever known. So that's what it is. If it happens, like in my case, my 20s, it was just horrible. It, changes everything. Who you were and who you become are very different. And that was kind of a horror that, that gave to Malcolm right off the bat. He has to adapt to, this disability that came out of nowhere and adapt to this time. So I put him in all this peril. I wanted him in a world of crap to have to adapt to and deal with and conquer and function. And that's one thing I use a lot of the characters for, were kind of markers for his progress as he went along. Because he's a captive, he's wounded, he's got to deal with what all these people are doing to him. And as time goes by, as he escapes and goes from culture to culture and environment to environment, he becomes more and more confident. He becomes more and more understanding. He becomes more and more Baitan, because he comes to adapt to what he has to adapt to in order to survive. He has to leave our planet behind and become part of Baitan culture. And with each of the wives that comes his way, they train him in a sense, and he has to adapt in different ways to different kinds of situations. So you learn about the whole planet as you watch him do it. So you as a reader adapt to that new world through his perspective and through his eyes, which gives you kind of a unique perspective, I would think.
Right. So I think with all that unique characters that you have in your book, it helps to engage. It helps you to engage with your readers better, and I think your readers will also come to know you personally better with with the
To
books
a
that you have.
point, I used to think, well, my wife always thought that Malcolm was me to a point. I can remember starting off and then the early backstory pages. Yeah, there's a lot of me, but I also know the moment, at least in my mind, when he became him.
Mhm.
Or the moment that he leaves Balnacan and he goes over the border into Rasby. From that point forward, every one of his experiences is completely new, and he adapts to things in a different way than I would. I don't think I had the problem with adapting to all the multiple sexual experiences that he has. He's got to. I don't think. I don't know, but I do think that he becomes his own character after about the first three chapters. Um, I also think that a lot of people will find a character that they identify with because there's all
Mhm.
the different types of characters in different places. Some will say, I like Lori or I like Elsbeth because I relate to her or I
Mhm.
like whoever it is that they pick out. It gives them a choice of characters to be their character, really.
Mhm. Right. I think the characters evolved as time goes, right? So,
Well, and I try my best too. This is something that's tricky for some readers. Is the story is told very uniquely. The voices alternate. I gave them a Bayton dialect, and I tried very hard for the women who come from the farming areas and things like that who weren't very well educated. A simpler dialect, a simpler vocabulary than those who come from more educated class stratas. So you have that conflict going back and forth because they have to live together. They become a family together. They create
mhm.
well, they transform the planet in the end. I don't want to say too much about that, but yeah, there's a multiplicity of things going on. That's why I really like these books. I'll keep you awake.
Right.
I really enjoyed listening to what you were saying there about the blindness, and you have a unique perspective that 99% of the authors, are sorry, the readers don't have, and that
Exactly.
is always interesting to see things from a new perspective. And as a science fiction writer myself, it also then triggers other ideas. Different creatures have different sense organs, and I
Mhm.
can envision a variation of your theme where a human is transported to a world where sight, for example, is totally worthless as a sense, maybe
Yeah.
because the atmosphere is very foggy or whatever, so you don't really get to see hardly anything. But all of the alien creatures, for example, maybe they're like bats where they can
Mhm.
detect things at distance and recognize things at distance in a way that's totally different uh,
Mhm.
Correct.
than the human. So that's an interesting idea that you could have lots of fun with, taking variations on a theme.
Mhm.
Mhm. Right. So, um, coming to the central theme of today's show, which is COVID-19, staying at home, reading more books, and probably you can use this time to write more books or probably engage with your readers. So that's what we're going to talk about, right? Next, and so Donald, probably you would want to let us know a bit about your, the situation where you are right now and how you're coping with it. Are you staying home? And if you're staying home, you probably want to talk about how you are taking this opportunity to engage with readers and also other authors out there. Your free book that you mentioned before. So yeah.
Well, actually, I'm one of the people who either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your viewpoint, can work remotely. Since
Mm-hmm.
I work in software and systems engineering, I naturally, tend to use computers a lot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, since I have Crohn's disease, I tend to work from home most of the time anyway. So for me, from a free time standpoint, it hasn't really changed much. I'm still doing the same work that I always do. And now, where it's different is naturally there are lots of things that I used to do that I can't do anymore. So, I trifecta of the COVID-19 issues here. I'm over 60, 65. I have chronic illnesses, including asthma that I get pretty bad when I have an upper respiratory infection. And I take medicines that knock down my immune system. So basically stuck in the house, but good regardless of what happens outdoors.
Right. So
yeah, for me, it's kind of like I tell anybody else, they're learning how to live like I already lived. This quarantine, but I'm at home most of the time, and I'm working remotely and on the computer all of the time, and like to have people come by. And then the social life has disappeared, obviously, because of the current conditions, but different for me.
Right. So I think it doesn't affect much to those who are working from home. Like, I work from home, I work remotely. So that has not affected my job. But nevertheless, I can't step out of my house. I can't meet my friends. I know there are so many restrictions out there. I talk about the food supplies, talk about toilet rolls, right? So it's very busy. No matter where you live, I think it's just the same. So I'm just taking this time to write more blog posts, do more readings at this point of time. So we also see a lot of people trying to read more books at this point of time. Okay, when where they don't really do it often in the past, but they kind of like suddenly get all the time in the world to read, and they are starting to pick up books, right? So with regards to that, so Donald, you have one book which is listed for free at this point of time, where I think readers might want to pick that book. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, this is the one that's free. It's the first book in the Hellhole series. Basically, I got the idea for this, I think 2014. During the summer of 2014, Russian scientists were notified that these 3 humongous holes appeared in a peninsula in northern Siberia. And these holes were like 150, 200 feet across, and perfectly cylindrical, and about as deep as they are around. And that's just really amazing, because that land is permafrost. So it's frozen rock hard if you get below 2 or 3, 4 feet down. And so the natural question is, what could possibly have made those holes, and where did all the dirt go that was in the holes? And when that got me thinking about that, then I thought, what if instead of 3 holes in northern Siberia that happened sometime during that year, there were literally thousands of holes that showed up around the entire Arctic Circle overnight? And what is this going to do to the oil wells and things like that in northern Alaska? So that's sort of the start of this book here. So this is Hellhole's What Lurks Below. And then the second book, Hellhole's Demons on the Dalton, picks up where the first book leaves off. The first book is written from the standpoint of a male geologist that's hired by the oil companies. And the second book is written from the viewpoint of his wife, a climatologist. And I spent an entire summer reading nothing but books written by female authors with strong female characters, so I could pretend I was a female author writing this book. And actually, one of the best reviews I ever got was that the person had a hard time believing that the same person wrote both books.
Yeah.
That's the series I recommend people start with if they're at all interested in science fiction, alien adventures, apocalypse. This isn't post-apocalypse. This is apocalypse happening. Whereas this book is just totally different.
Right. So that's the one that has won the award, right?
Right. This is the one that's won awards.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dr. Wesley, coming to your books, tell us about your books. Have you listed any of your books for free, or are there any books on at a discounted price for a period of time? Let us know about that.
Before I do that, let me toss in a quote that I kind of had in mind when I knew we were going to do this interview. And that was from Emily Dickinson, who said, "A book is a frigate." And it occurred to me that while everybody is quarantined and strapped in their homes, that reading is our frigate. It takes us anywhere. For those of us in science fiction, different galaxies, different universes, different creatures, different anything. It doesn't have to be science fiction, though. Any kind of reading that you like. It takes you to some place different. It takes you to places you wouldn't otherwise go. It takes you to people you would otherwise not meet. This is a time to go sailing around the universe through books. And I wanted to make sure that people thought about that, what you're reading. It's not something to present, something to do just to